John Jacob "Jack" Astor IV, often dubbed Jackass in the press, was an American businessman, real estate builder, investor, inventor, writer, lieutenant colonel in the Spanish-American War, and a prominent member of the Astor family. In April 1912, Astor earned a prominent place in history when he embarked on the ocean liner RMS Titanic, which struck an iceberg and sank in the early hours of April 15. Astor was among the 1,514 people on board who did not survive. He was the richest passenger aboard the Titanic, and was thought to be among the richest people in the world at the time, with a net worth of $85 million when he died. Early life, education, and family. John Jacob Astor IV was born on July 13, 1864. He was the youngest of 5 children and only son of businessman, collector, and racehorse breeder owner William Backlhouse Astor, Jr. and socialite Caroline Webster Lena Schermerhorn. His 4 elder sisters were Emily, Helen, Charlotte, and Caroline. He was a great-grandson of fur trader John Jacob Astor and Sarah Cox Todd, whose fortune made the Astor family one of the wealthiest families in the United States. Jack's paternal grandfather William Backlhouse Astor, Sr. was a prominent real estate businessman. Through his paternal grandmother Margaret Rebecca Armstrong, Jack was also a great-grandson of Senator John Armstrong, Jr. and Alida Livingston of the Livingston family. Lena's parents were New York Mayor Abraham Moss Schermerhorn and Helen White. Astor attended St. Paul's School in Concord, New Hampshire and later attended Harvard University. Jack was also a nephew of financier-philanthropist John Jacob Astor III and grandnephew of occasional poet John Jacob Astor, Jr. Helen's husband was diplomat James Roosevelt Rosie Roosevelt, half-brother of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt of the Roosevelt family. Carrie, a noted philanthropist, was the wife of Marshall Orme Wilson, brother of banker Richard Thornton Wilson, Jr. and socialite Grace Graham Wilson. Jack was also a first cousin of Viscount William Waldorf Willie Astor. Marriages. On February 17, 1891, Astor married socialite Ava Lowell Willing, a daughter of Edward Shippen Willing and Alice Barton. The couple had 2 children, William Vincent Astor, businessman and philanthropist, Ava Alice Muriel Astor, socialite and heiress. Jack and Ava divorced in November 1909. Compounding the scandal of their divorce was Astor's announcement that he would remarry. At the age of 47, Jack married 18-year-old socialite Madeline Talmadge Force, the sister of real estate businesswoman and socialite Catherine Emmons Force. Catherine and Madeline's parents were William Herbert Force and Catherine Arvilla Talmadge. They were married in his mother's ballroom at Beechwood, the family's Newport, Rhode Island house. There was also much controversy over their 29-year age difference. His son Vincent despised Madeline, yet he served as best man at Jack and Madeline's wedding. The couple took an extended honeymoon in Europe and Egypt to wait for the gossip to calm down. Among the few Americans who did not spurn him at this time was Margaret Brown, later fictionalized as the unsinkable Molly Brown. She accompanied the Astors to Egypt and France and, by coincidence, was called home to the U.S. at the same time. The Astors also found it necessary to abbreviate their touring careers. Among Astor's accomplishments was A Journey in Other Worlds, an 1894 science fiction novel about life in the year 2000 on the planets Saturn and Jupiter. He also patented several inventions, including a bicycle brake in 1898, a vibratory disintegrator used to produce gas from peat moss, and a pneumatic road improver, and helped develop a turbine engine. Astor made millions in real estate. In 1897, Astor built the Astoria Hotel, the world's most luxurious hotel, in New York City, adjoining the Waldorf Hotel owned by Astor's cousin and rival, Willie. The complex became known as the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, coincidentally becoming the host location to the U.S. inquiries into the sinking of the RMS Titanic, in which Colonel Astor was killed. From 1894 to 1896, he was on the staff of Governor Levi P. Morton. Shortly after the outbreak of the Spanish-American War in 1898, Astor personally financed a volunteer artillery unit known as the Astor Battery, which saw service in the Philippines. Astor was appointed a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Volunteers and served as a staff officer in Cuba during the Santiago campaign. During this time he allowed his yacht, the Normal, to be used by U.S. government. During the war, Astor appeared in the films President McKinley's Inspection of Camp Wyckoff in 1898 and Colonel John Jacob Astor, Staff and Veterans of the Spanish-American War in 1899. As a result of his military service, Astor was entitled to the Spanish Campaign Medal. Astor was a member of several military and hereditary societies. He was an early member of the New York Society of Colonial Wars and was assigned membership number 138. He was also a member of the Military Order of Foreign Wars, Society of the Army of Santiago and the Society of the American Wars of the United States. His estate Ferncliff, north of the town center of Rhinebeck, New York, with 1.5 miles of Hudson River frontage in the picturesque lower Hudson River Valley, had been purchased piecemeal by his father in the mid-19th century. Astor was born there. His father's Italianate house of 1864 was partly rebuilt in 1904 to designs by Stanford White of McKim, Mead, and White, retaining its conservative exterior, and a sports pavilion in Louis XVI style was added. The casino, or Astor Courts, reportedly housed the first residential indoor swimming pool in the U.S., an indoor tennis court with vaulting of course Stavino tile, and guest bedrooms. In the lower level were a bowling alley and a shooting range. The estate, reduced to 50 acres and renamed Astor Courts, eventually became a wedding venue. The wedding of Chelsea Clinton took place there on July 31, 2010. Titanic. While traveling, Madeline became pregnant, and wanting the child born in the U.S., the Astors boarded the RMS Titanic on her maiden voyage to New York. They embarked in Cherbourg, France, in first class and were the wealthiest passengers aboard. Accompanying the Astors were Astor's valet, Victor Robbins, Madeline's maid, Rosalie Bidouin, and her nurse, Caroline Louise Enders. They also took their pet Airedale, Kitty. The Astors were deeply fond of their dog and had come close to losing her on a previous trip when she went missing in Egypt. Kitty did not survive the sinking. A short while after the Titanic hit the iceberg that caused her to sink, Astor informed his wife of the collision, but told her that the damage did not appear to be serious. Sometime later, as the ship's lifeboats for first class were being manned, Colonel Astor remained unperturbed. He and his family played with the mechanical horses in the gymnasium. At some point Astor is thought to have sliced the lining of an extra lifebelt with a penknife to show his wife its contents, either to prove that they were not of use or to reassure her that they were. When Second Officer Charles Lightoller later arrived on A deck to finish loading Lifeboat 4, Astor helped his wife, with her maid and nurse, into it. He then asked if he might join his wife because she was in a delicate condition. However, Lightoller told him that men were not to be allowed to board until all the women and children had been loaded. After Lifeboat 4 was lowered at 1:55 a.m., Astor is said to have stood alone while others tried to free the remaining collapsible boats. He was last seen alive on the starboard bridge wing, smoking a cigarette with Jack Futrell. A mere half-hour later, the ship disappeared beneath the ocean. Madeline, her nurse, and her maid survived. Colonel Astor and his valet, Victor Robbins, did not. According to Titanic passenger Archibald Gracie 4, she was lifted up through the window, and her husband helped her on the other side, and when she got in, her husband was on one side of this window and I was on the other side, at the next window. I heard Mr. Astor ask the second officer whether he would not be allowed to go aboard this boat to protect his wife. He said, "No, sir, no man is allowed on this boat or any of the boats until the ladies are off." Mr. Astor then said, "Well, tell me what is the number of this boat so I may find her afterwards," or words to that effect. The answer came back, "No 4." In the aftermath, ships were sent out to retrieve the bodies from the site of the sinking. Of the 1,517 passengers and crew that perished in the sinking, only 333 bodies were ever recovered. Colonel Astor's body was recovered on April 22 by the cable ship Mackay Bennett. Astor was identified by the initial sewn on the label of his jacket. Among the items found on him was a gold pocket watch which his son Vincent claimed and wore the rest of his life. Number 124 Euro male Euro estimated age 50 Euro light hair and moustache, clothing Euro blue serge suit. Blue handkerchief with a V. Belt with gold buckle. Brown boots with red rubber soles. Brown flannel shirt. JJA on back of collar. Effects Euro gold watch. Cuff links, gold with diamond. Diamond ring with 3 stones. A £225 in English notes. $2,440 in notes. A £5 in gold. 7s in silver. 5 10-franc pieces. Gold pencil. Pocketbook. First class name J.J. Astor IV. Astor was buried in Trinity Church Cemetery in New York City. 4 months after the Titanic sunk, Madeline Astor gave birth to his second son, socialite John Jacob Jakey Astor VI. Cause of death: for many years there has been conflicting and contradictory information regarding the exact manner in which Astor perished in the sinking. Many researchers have expressed the belief that Astor was crushed to death by one of the ship's falling funnels, this opinion being based on the claim that his body was recovered in a mangled state, but all who examined his body maintained that it was in perfect condition with no bruising. Survivor Philip Mock claimed to have seen Astor in the water clinging to a raft with William Thomas Stead. "Their feet became frozen," said Mock, "and they were forced to release their hold. Both were drowned." Will Astor left $69 million of his $85 million estate to Vincent. This value included his estate in Rhinebeck and his yacht, the Norma. To Madeline, he left a $5 million trust fund and an annual paycheck of $500,000, as well as use of his New York mansion 65th and 5th Avenue, all its furnishings, and his Newport mansion Beechwood and all of its furnishings, pick of whichever luxury limousine she wanted from his collection, and 5 of his prized horses as long as she did not remarry. His daughter Ava received a $10 million trust fund. Upon turning 21, Jakey inherited the trust fund Colonel Astor set aside for him. Legacy. Astor's prominence led to the creation of many exaggerated and unsubstantiated accounts about his actions during the sinking of the Titanic. One story alleges that he opened the ship's kennel and released the dogs. In another, he placed a woman's hat on a boy to make sure the child was able to get into a lifeboat. Another legend claims that after the ship hit the iceberg, he quipped, "I asked for ice, but this is ridiculous." These stories appeared in newspapers, magazines, and even books about the sinking. In reality, none of the claims about Astor's actions were substantiated, as nobody who recognized him survived other than the women who boarded lifeboats relatively early on. Wade wrote that the ice joke is almost certainly apocryphal, as Astor was not known for making jokes, and that the story about the hat may have been invented by the reporter. Portrayals. Astor's fame has made him a frequent character in films about the Titanic. German actor Karl Scher NBA CK played Astor in the 1943 Nazi propaganda film Titanic. William Johnston played Astor in the 1953 film Titanic, and in the 1997 version of Titanic he was played by Eric Broiden. In the 1996 miniseries, he was played by Scott Alanz. Astor was also portrayed by David Janssen in the 1979 film SOS Titanic. Perennially, in the town of Astoria, Oregon, he is portrayed by a local amateur actor in street corner vignettes. He was played by Miles Richardson in the 2012 Titanic miniseries. In April 2012, Colonel Astor was portrayed by his great-grandson Gregory Todd Astor in Titanic the Musical. References. External links. Works by John Jacob Astor IV at Project Gutenberg, texts on Wikisource, Astor, John Jacob, Capitalist. Appleton Cyclopedia of American Biography. 1900 an article on his uncle in which he is mentioned. Astor, John Jacob. An American Capitalist, Inventor, and Soldier. New International Encyclopedia 1905 Astor, John Jacob, American Capitalist and Inventor. Encyclopedia Americana. 1920 Astor, John Jacob, An American Capitalist. Collier's New Encyclopedia 1921a. Funeral of Colonel Astor at news.hrvh.org.